brought together 4 speakers tonight, all doing some great impactful work to improve food systems in Japan and beyond. So we're excited to hear from them. Some of the panelists specialize in producing their own food, and all of them are working towards improving food-related social issues. So I'd like to just go around now and get a quick little intro from all 4 of them. And then we're going to have each of them do a presentation for about 12 to 15 minutes with a short Q&A after each. Then we do that, have a bit of a panel discussion. So for the audience, feel free to send in your questions via the comment section, and we'll try to get to everything we can. And if not, please forgive us, but we're trying we'll make sure to try to get to everyone. So first, we'll start with Riho. If you can hear me, we'll just a quick intro and then kind of go around from there.
Shall I turn the video on or?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, can you see me now? Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for watching the live streaming. I'm Riho and I'm a founder of a grassroots project called ShockTech and also a member of our multiple community initiatives. So I'm excited to talk about some youth-led initiatives in Tokyo, as well as about responsible consumption.
Great, thank you. Okay, can we go to Kai now?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I guess we can't see you. My name is Kai Sawyer. I'm a peace and sustainability activist. And yeah, I'm just really interested in how do we change so we have a better future, and not just food systems, but economics, culture, politics, all that stuff. So we're really looking at what is the roots of the challenges that we're facing, and then how can we realistically engage it so that we can have a better future for the next 100 years or so. Cool.
Okay, John, next.
Good evening. My name's John Walsh. I'm a self-employed urban farming consultant in Tokyo, Japan. And I basically, like our grandparents did, just with no chemicals. And the goal is to basically make urban food fashionable again. And bring back the unhealthy food production techniques that past generations had, so that we can build a more healthy and sustainable future. I'm going to be talking tonight about quite a few different ways that people can grow food in urban spaces, and also how we can start growing food tomorrow. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, Minori.
Hello everybody, thank you for watching. My name is Minori Ogawa. I live in Nishiaizu town in Fukushima Prefecture, Japan. And I'm a founder of Dana Village, which is a community as well as like a holistic center for including organic farming, yoga, meditation, healing, and a sustainable lifestyle. So today I talk about half farming, half anything, which is said Han no Han X in Japanese, which I find a hope as a solution of the current state of food system.
Perfect. Thank you guys very much. Okay, so to begin with, we're going to start with Riho's presentation for now, and then we'll have a few questions afterwards for her, and then after that, we'll kind of go in the order we just went. So then we'll go to Kai, then John, then Minori. And this is on the Boma Global channel currently. Thank you. So Riho, you can start us off.
Okay. Can you enable the video for me, please? Or is it just a share screen? Here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start my presentation. So before diving into the topic of today's discussion, reimagining the food systems, I'll quickly talk about my background. So as I said, I'm Riho Matsumaru and I'm 22, just graduated from university last month, and I'm based in Tokyo. And I'm a founder of the grassroots project Shoktak, also a member of the farmers market in Tokyo. And I'm also involved with some activities and initiatives related to zero waste and climate crisis related to food. So my interest and passion for food and sustainability first started with my own health issues. What I mean by that is when I was in high school, I had a chance to visit Canada to study English. And I spent 3 months there, but every day I ate unhealthy food, like a lot of this and this. So after 3 months, I think it's not hard for you to imagine that I gained weight. And that was when I started to think about what I should eat to improve my health. And the more I looked into like food, the more information I found about how food can also affect society and the environment. So my interest in food gradually shifted from like personal based, like health, into more like societal and environmental impact. So after I entered college, I first joined a not-for-profit organization called Table for Two, which was founded in Japan in 2007. And it's an organization to fight against the global inequality in food distribution and consumption through this meal sharing scheme, which is shown in this image. So a customer orders healthy meal at a restaurant or cafeteria, and that in that price, a little sum of donation is included, and by eating that healthy food, you can donate to children in need. And there is a student organization related to this NPO, which was called Table for Two University Association. So I was involved with this organization by spreading the concept of the scheme and also incorporating implementing the scheme to my university. And as well as doing that, I also held cooking workshops using local Wanki vegetables at my university with my project members, so that we could raise awareness between students about local consumption and food waste, as well as like hunger and obesity. But as I continued working on activities related to food and like social issues, I came to realize that a lot of issues relating to food are caused by the distance that we have, especially in urban areas. The distance between producers and consumers is huge, and that results in urban consumers less careful producers, less careful social and environmental issues of food, and more production of waste that includes both food waste and packaging waste, and more usage of energy because of transportation. So before I talk about some like consumption, I found this interesting research on consumer models in Japan. So this professor, researcher, Tokuno, divided the types of consumers into 4. And according to him, about half of the consumers are called split consumers. So they think that it's important to buy local or buy organic, but they are still not able to incorporate that option into their everyday consumption. And on the bottom left, helpless consumers, about 23% of all the consumers, and they don't care much about like agricultural products, and they don't want to spend too much money on food. And on the bottom right, health conscious consumers, which was what I was when I first started to think about my diet. And they are willing to pay for health conscious products, but they don't fully understand the value of like good agriculture products. And lastly, on the top right is desired consumers. So this is only 5% of all the consumers, but they tend to understand the value of agriculture products, and they are willing to spend money on such products. And to create a better food system in urban areas, it's absolutely important to increase the number of desired consumers. And there should be multiple ways to achieve that, but one of the ways is to start initiatives or join the initiatives to improve the food systems. So from here, I'm going to introduce some of the initiatives and projects that I started and I'm part of. So one is, as I mentioned, it's called ShockTag, and it's a project to spark conversations on food and sustainability. So I write online articles on some like food-related topics, through which readers can think about social and environmental issues. And I also organize some events to raise awareness. And for those who are wondering why ShockTag, it sounds like shokutaku, which means a dining table in Japanese. So that's where the name comes from. Some examples from my articles. So I write about, for example, a zero waste brewery in Tokushima that use some surplus food in the process of beer brewing, and also about the relationship between food and climate crisis. So next is what we do at the farmers market to reduce waste. So the farmers market at UNU is a weekend market to connect urban dwellers with farmers. So we have been unable to open our market because of the pandemic lately, but we usually open on weekends. And we have some programs to reduce waste here. And these are, so one is this on the right, boomerang bags. So boomerang bags are the concept born in Australia, and it's basically the reusable bags you can borrow and bring back next time. So it's a very easy way to reduce waste at the market. And also we used to do a monthly event called Naked Market, through which consumers can experience bulk shopping. It's a great way for customers to experience what it's like to buy without packaging, because it's still rare to have bulk stores in Japan right now. And this is another initiative in Tokyo called Gomi Zero, and it's it aims to reduce waste in Shibuya, Harajuku, which is quite at the center of Tokyo, full of youth. And it also serves a community of activists and entrepreneurs in the zero waste movement in Japan. So what we do as Gomi Zero is an annual series of events on zero waste, and we organize this event around the 30th of May, because 5:30 is read Gomi Zero in Japanese, and it means zero waste. Unfortunately, we had to postpone the event this year, but we are hoping to do it in autumn. And also this on the left is bread beer, which is beer made with surplus bread from a bakery. So the concept itself comes from toast ale in the UK. So they made a beer with bread, and it's a great way to reduce food waste, as well as casually getting people to know about food waste issues. And last but not least, this is a urban beekeeping project in Kichijoji, Tokyo, called Honeycomb Project. And we aim to connect people in the local community, as well as learning the importance that bees have in the ecosystem. So, as well as doing beekeeping, we have a monthly market near the station where local traders can join, and it can be a place for local residents to come and chat. And we also hold some workshop for kids. So last year we had beeswax candle making workshop, and before the workshop we talked about how bees are important in our natural world to kids, so that they can learn about the ecosystem as well as enjoying the workshop. So these are the initiatives and projects that I'm taking part of to reconsider urban food systems and consumption in Tokyo. So I think that it's one of the kind of easy ways to start taking action, or like to improve the food systems for us. But if we kind of simplify the steps to sustainable food in urban cities, I think there are 3. So firstly, you should know where your food comes from. So you can visit the farmers market, or you can look for local farmers who have farms near your house. And next, it's important to opt for local or organic produce wherever possible with less packaging, so that we can reduce the environmental impact in our everyday consumption. And third, it's very important that we should try growing your own food. And this is something that I'm still I've started working on. So I'm not an expert on this topic. So I'm excited to hear about the other presenters' talks about growing their own food. So this is the end of presentation, and thank you for listening.
Great. Thank you. That was a really great start. Thank you so much, Rio. Yeah. And I think we had a question come in, and I was actually going to ask the same question. But what is some of the pushback in terms of the naked market at Aoyama Farmers Market? Like, what's some of the pushback or the difficulties maybe from whether it's from the farmers, producers, or consumers, what makes it difficult to avoid the plastics in the farmers markets in Tokyo? And
Okay, that's a good question. I think one difficulty that farmers have is that it's difficult to keep the vegetables fresh without the plastic packaging, and farmers want to deliver their vegetables in the best condition to customers. So that's kind of like a dilemma for producers. And for other items like dried food and stuff, there is like legal barrier that doesn't allow us to like sell food unpackaged outside. So you need special equipment or special permission. So it's hard to do it every weekend. So
yeah,
that's some of the difficulties that we have.
okay, cool, gotcha. And then during this time now, since obviously, unfortunately, the market has had to be canceled, what are some of the initiatives you guys are doing to still kind of support the farmers and still try and accomplish like from farmer to consumer, like that sale? What have you guys done to adjust?
So we are collecting information from each producer and vendor at the market about like how they sell their produce to customers individually. So some farmers have their own like online stores, and like some accept orders by email. So we try to gather such information and put that on our website so that customers who always like come to the market can still access to fresh and like good food without the market happening on weekends. And we are trying to accomplish like start something else to kind of promote that kind of connection between farmers and customers, but we're still kind of figuring out what we should do.
Cool. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Sounds like you've gotten involved with some really great initiatives and youth initiatives, and also the farmers market initiative too. So very cool. Thank you. And in terms of growing your own food, now we can transition over to Kai, who I think in part is going to speak some about that and a lot of other topics, but we'll transition over now to Kai Sawyer. So thanks again, Rio.
All right. Am I audible?
Yep. Should be good
Awesome.
to go.
All right. So, hey, everybody again. I'm Kai Sawyer, and I'm going to talk a little more about the big picture. And I really like what Riho talked about, because initiatives like that really give us insight into some of the problems that we're facing systemically, and also a lot of the awesome things that people just do, you know, because we want to engage, we want to change, and it's not always easy, but we never give up. So a little bit about me. It's hard to do a self intro in a minute, but so I'm kind of like a cartoon character in Japan. I've been spreading the idea of urban permaculture and permaculture in Japan, and I work with the media, and they like the Afro, so there's a lot of play with that. And I have a project called Tokyo Urban Permaculture, which started out as a blog for me to share about ideas of permaculture and nonviolent communication, gift ecology, mindfulness, and activism, things that I just felt like really might have an edge to transforming a lot of the major challenges we face as humanity. And then now I have a kind of an experimental center, training center, refuge called the Peace and Permaculture Dojo, where now we train people from around the world, but I try to focus on Japanese, on living the change that we envision. So you can look, there's a little bit of information online. And so what I'm interested in systems activism. So what are the roots of our problems? Like Riho just talked about the legal issues around selling dried products that are not packaged. So there's these systemic issues, and we all come into, we all face those things whenever we try to do cool initiatives. It's kind of like we're handicapped. So it's, the cards are stacked against any wonderful initiatives that are local, organic, actually good for people. And so for me, you know, we have the food and health crisis with Corona right now that's really apparent. Then it's linked to the financial crisis, and it's linked to poverty, and climate change doesn't help that. And then there's pollution. And in many countries, we're also seeing an erosion of democracy and all that stuff. So these are not new problems. We've had them for quite a long time. We know about them. We've had lots of innovators and lots of technological shifts, but they continue. So why do they continue? Like, what are we missing? And so that's what I'm interested in, is the deeper side of this iceberg. Like, the events are horrible, but what do we need to change the systems? And a big part of that is the economic system. And I think some of you might already have a sense of like how much pressure our global economic system puts on our lives, on our politics, on our local culture. We're always encouraged to monetize things, to make things that are priceless into things that have numbers that can be traded on the global market, where people who don't understand the impact of those investments, because they're actually not directly connected to the people who will experience the impacts, how that kind of system just creates a lot of problems that are really hard to solve. And then another layer of that is our consciousness. And so Riho was talking about, you know, consumers and kind of like what the desired consumers are. But for me, it's really about how do we get out of this kind of identity as consumers. That's a pretty new concept, and it was created by people, and consumers consume, and the consumption creates trash. And so how do we transform consumers to producers? And even more exciting for me is not just producers who are able to produce a lot of things like we already have, but visionaries. How do we create a culture where we keep increasing visionaries who can really understand that we live in abundance? The earth is such an amazing place, and it's supported human life and many other lives for so long without any financial cost. So how do we use that as the design so that we just increase life rather than continue to always worry about the GDP and economic growth? So this is, for me, traditional thinking is like one problem, one solution, or this is the cause of this problem. But in systems thinking, you're understanding that all these different systems are interlinked. How we see the reality, our financial system, our food system, health, poverty. And so it's understanding things as a system, and that everything is interconnected. So anything you do will impact all the other things. You just might not see it directly. And really trying to use that. And then for me, permaculture is about designing beneficial relationships. So a lot of what Riho talked about is creating beneficial relationships with economy, ecology, community. So how do we design more of these? And so just as an experiment, this is a rooftop that was unused, and it wasn't actually designed for people to be on top of it. And somebody told me, hey, you can use this rooftop if you wanted. So for me, it's like an experiment. Like, how do I transform this space that's, you know, basically useless? It's just insulation on a metal roof into a place. And so how do you do this without using much money, without using much energy? And you just create a culture of regeneration. So people just on their own start to decide to come here, make it a nicer place, start to do things like yoga. In the background, you can see Omotesando, which is kind of the fashion district Riho is talking about with the Gomi, the trash zero movement. It's the same area. So this is cultural regeneration for me. And this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about in terms of like visionaries. So you see this, and then you can envision this, and then you can create a flow so that this happens, but it's not a business. So it's not like you just need to continue to produce a lot of money to keep things going, because for me, that's a lot of work. And eventually when something like a pandemic happens and your business no longer has an income, it doesn't continue, but cultures continue for hundreds of years. So how do we design things that will last for hundreds of years, or even just 100? And during this, near this rooftop, I teach people about worm composting. But really, it's not just about composting. You know, how do you put food waste back into the soil, which for me is so fundamental. It's like trash is a human concept. There was no, you know, nature doesn't have a concept of trash. We've created this thing called trash. And then it's a problem, and we're spending lots of money and using lots of technology to try to solve it. But nature's never had a problem with trash. It just, food, whatever you don't use goes back to the soil, and then it's somebody else's food. So how do you get an urban population to understand that? But even more for me is the concept of the gift economy. So when you have a worm bin and it's healthy, you get more worms, and eventually you have too many worms, so you have to give it to somebody, and then they have a worm bin, and then they have to give it to somebody. So it just increases. It's the economy of abundance. So it just kind of increases, and it gets very exciting if you're into worms. And the same thing with plants. You plant the, you know, tomato, and each tomato has, you know, dozens of seeds. So you can give those seeds to other people, and then they can grow tomatoes. And so it just, this is how nature works. It's an economy of abundance, of increasing. Whereas our financial economy generally feels like it's always like running out. So we have to fill in the bucket that has a bunch of holes. So for me, it's like, how do we connect these basic living practices to deeper concepts? Another one that I really am excited about is traditional miso making. So this is a practice of relocalizing. So I used to not even eat miso soup that much. And then I got into drinking miso every morning, but I would buy it. And then a friend told me, why don't you make it? It's super easy. So I started to make it, and I just realized that the process of making miso, which connected me to my ancestors, it connected me to my food, it connected me to community, because it's fun to make miso as a community. And actually the microorganisms on our hands are inoculating the miso. And the more people you have, Japanese generally say, the more tasty the miso becomes, because it has everybody's microbes. And really, this is an important concept, is like everything is an ecosystem. Our hands are an ecosystem. There's lots of different microbes. We're trying to kill them now, but it's actually dangerous to kill that microorganism ecosystem, because that's what protects us from viruses too. So they're not all bad. And so anyways, it connects us to ecology, it connects us to culture, it connects us to lots of different things. So for me, this is a really important concept, is for each of us to look into our cultures and reconnect with traditional food making, because it's actually super deep. It's not just being self-sufficient. It's actually, it changes our consciousness, it changes our biology. And so I highly recommend miso making, because I'm excited about it, and it's super healthy, but also to connect to your own cultures. And so to bring that to another dimension is, so my friends do Earth Day Tokyo in, this is like the Congress building. We call it the House of Councilors, the lower house. And so they do Earth Day in the lower house, which is pretty radical in itself. And they do miso making every year. And they go to different parliament members and get them to come join us in our Earth Day inside their building. And we actually get them to stick their hands and make miso with us. And so on the top right, you see Kan Naoto, who is the former prime minister, I think during the Fukushima crisis, nuclear meltdown. And so anyways, we get the former prime minister, we get various party officials to come and just make miso with ordinary citizens. And this is such a radical concept, but so normal. If we were in a small community, this would be the thing to do. You know, you have your local politician and you have the grandma next door and you have the kids, and you would come together and you would connect as a community and understand that food brings us together, and that it's important to protect our food, to protect our culture and protect our community, because that's what is, you know, the essential ingredients of our well-being, of our, you know, the reason for living. And so to get us to all just make food, and even if you have a political discussion that goes nowhere, which is oftentimes what political discussions go, at least you get food. And so this is a very productive thing to do. So you can have a conversation, the conversation can be anything, but it's you're actually making miso, and you'll have healthy miso at the end of this process, and you humanize each other. And my friends talk about spreading probiotics into politics, which I think is a really good idea, because I imagine it's really tough to be a politician, because whatever you do, somebody will complain, and everybody's watching you, and everybody's always trying to find a scandal. So you really feel dehumanized, but here you're a human, you're just another person making miso. And so for me, this is also not just about food, but really about who we are. And miso making, I feel like, is kind of like Gandhi's charka, where he was spinning the wheel and making cotton. This is our symbol of not just resistance, but renewal and transformation and evolution. And I'll just say two more things, because the theme is insights from Japan. And there's a really amazing book called Farmers of 40 Centuries by a agricultural researcher. It's an old book, but he just talks about how he was amazed that people from China, Korea, and Japan were able to live on their land for thousands of years, maybe 4,000 years, and they still had productive agriculture. So he was just like, America, you know, was just a few hundred years in, and then they just wiped out their soil. So how did these people continue? And so he did very thorough research, and he wrote about that. So for me, it's like, instead of always trying to find something new and more technologically advanced and more complicated and more flashy, why don't we just do what we know works? I mean, people have been around for a very long time, and we haven't done anything that fancy. We just kind of stayed in harmony with nature. And now we're trying to really find ways where we can get away from nature as much as possible, but still be sustainable, which we've never done before. So local, small scale, organic, we know it works. So why not do that? And the other one that I wanted to leave off with is a concept I really like called just enough. In Japanese, is ware tada taru o shiru. This is a Zen koan or concept, but I think it really is one of the main, you know, solutions for anything. Is if we know what's enough, we'll be satisfied, and we won't have to try to always be getting more. But both our economic system and our culture never knows enough. So we have to always get more and more and more. And most of us know that it doesn't lead to happiness. It's endless. So how do we develop a culture where we can reconnect with what is enough? How do we know what's enough? You know, and so for me, that's kind of the deeper philosophical point that I want to leave you all with. And so just a few next steps is, Riho talked about growing something. So I would say, yeah, grow anything. And it's not about being self-sufficient, but it's a doorway into a different type of consciousness. And so I would say grow something, a herb, a potato, something easy at first, and compost. That's the first step, definitely, because there's a world of amazingness waiting when you do that. And then on the systems level, to localize and change the global economic system, which sounds super big, but it's super important and it's totally possible. And then on the consciousness level is remembering that we everything is connected. So anything we do to others, to the environment, all comes back to us. All right, so that's my little spiel.
Thank you very much. It's always awesome to hear from you, Kai. Really appreciate it. Yeah. And just I had a quick question for you, which actually might lead well into some of what John might talk about. What are some of the challenges you've seen when trying to implement like permaculture projects in Tokyo, and maybe specifically in Tokyo versus other places? What are some of the kind of obstacles that you face?
Well, in permaculture, we always say the problem is the solution. So the obstacles never seem so bad. But I think one of the biggest challenges is people are always pushed for money and time. And so it's hard to work with people when they are always thinking about not enough money, not enough time. You say, well, do a garden. I don't have space. I don't have time. So I think that the culture is very challenging. And the fact that most people don't see much nature on a daily basis and actually see things that are artificially or man-made, and all the man-made things cost money. So the feedback they get on a daily basis is things cost money and I have to make money to live. In Japanese, they have this phrase, お金がないと食っていけない. If I don't have money, I can't eat. So to work with that culture is quite challenging because it's heavily embedded, but it, you just need a little entry and then things shift radically. So yeah.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, and we'll get into some more questions with you a bit later on, but thanks so much. That's great. And now be moving on to urban farmer extraordinaire, Mr. John Walsh. If you could share a little bit with us.
Thanks a lot for that, Kai. That was a really fascinating presentation. It seemed to sort of cover a lot of different levels there. Really good stuff. What I'm basically going to be talking about tonight is bringing food back to the city. Now, what's the point in doing that, considering especially in places like Japan, and purchasing food is so incredibly convenient and easy? Well, there's a number of different reasons, and one of them can be sort of really clearly explained just by checking the food itself. I've got a packet of spinach here, which that I bought from the supermarket today. Most people would have no problem consuming this at all. I certainly wouldn't. I've also got a large apple here, also purchased from the supermarket. No problem consuming this at all. Unless I get some of this stuff here. This is basically pesticide, and I spray it like this. And then I would have a major problem consuming this, because this has basically been poisoned. Now, so my choice about consuming the apple has suddenly changed because it's been sprayed, and yet not with this. Now, why would I suddenly not want to eat the apple and be happy to eat the spinach? Well, I'd probably be happy to eat the spinach if I didn't know that the spinach has also been poisoned, just in the same way that the apple was. What's the difference between the two? Well, the difference between the two was that I saw the apple being sprayed, so I don't really want to touch that, but I didn't see the spinach being sprayed, so I can convince myself it's probably healthy. It's not. Another reason to grow your own food. In the city, it comes down to price. I've got a packet of tomatoes here that I purchased last night for 200 yen. There's about 9 tomatoes in there. And when I eat these tomatoes, there'll be none left, and there'll be a plastic carton that I'll just throw away. I've got a tomato seedling here, which I'm going to be planting tomorrow in my community garden. This cost 180 yen. The tomatoes cost 200 yen, so the plant was cheaper than the packet. And this tomato plant, in approximately 3 months, this will produce about 150 fresh and tasty cherry tomatoes, which is going to be approximately about 1 yen each, which makes them just about free. I'm not going to use chemicals to grow those tomatoes, so they're going to be very healthy, and they're going to be local too. So there'll be no pollution generated from basically moving the food from the countryside to the city. So there's a couple of good reasons there to actually start. Just a quick background about how I got into growing food in the city. I had no interest 9 years ago until the earthquake hit in Tohoku, and that completely changed how I thought about where food comes from and what we should do in terms of producing our own. And I quickly came to realize that if an earthquake the size of the one that hits northern Japan struck Tokyo, and the lots of supermarkets got destroyed and roads got blocked, and the trucks containing the food couldn't get through to the supermarkets, I just thought, right, where would food come from? And I had no answer, which was pretty freaky. So I thought, right, I've just got to start growing it where I am and bring the food to the city rather than rely on what's basically very fragile food distribution chains. So I bought a pot and I bought some spinach seeds and I sowed the seeds, and a plant grew. I was like, wow, this is fantastic. So I just planted in a whole lot more pots, and I found myself with a back garden full of food in about 1 month, and that was great. So I just thought, right, I can maybe do something with this. So I started teaching. So I basically got into I'll just check if that's, yep, is that on? Yep. So I basically got into growing food and starting to teach it. So in the last 9 years, I've trained nearly 900 people on how to grow their own healthy food. I've installed nearly over 20 gardens in Tokyo, including at the Grand Hyatt Tokyo Hotel. I teach at schools and embassies and clubs and privately at people's homes. And I've also got into encouraging people to donate some food to food banks. So basically, the concept behind that's to grow some and give some. Next, here's some photos of some of my teaching that I've been doing since 2012 at a number of schools around Tokyo. So I'm basically trying to not just teach children how to grow food, but also to motivate them to go home and grow food, and hopefully teach their mother, their father, their brother, their sister, whatever, as many people as possible to grow their own food, to spread the skills that will make them more self-sufficient and healthier, because so many kids these days have allergies that are really holding them back, and many of those allergies come from the food and the pesticides contained within them. And there's a really simple way to deal with the pesticides in the food, is just don't use them and grow your own. So that's schools. I'm also teaching kids at schools that do not have gardens at all, different ways that they can grow food and that incorporate recycling. So the large photo here on the left shows a fenced flower pot garden. And the photo on the right shows a 2-litre PET bottle that's been cut up and recycled and is now home to a parsley plant. And it's been strapped to the fence. This particular school had no garden. We didn't need a garden. Kids didn't need a garden. I just showed the kids how to grow food vertically. I also teach people how to utilize their balcony space and grow food. So this is about bringing food right to the front door and making people and showing people how to actually grow food at home, because so many people get their food from supermarkets, which get the food from the countryside. And what I'm basically trying to do here is to is to bring back the control of food production from the farmers back to people. So it's not just a case of bringing food to people, it's more a case of bringing people and back to the food. Now, what does bringing people back to food mean? Well, that basically means introducing people to the food production process. And from what I found, the last 2 years, the last two generations, sorry, the youngest two generations in cities, they've basically not largely been taught about how to grow food. Whereas when you go to our grandparents' generation and every single generation before them, we all knew how to grow food. It just seems that these last two generations, the key skills of food production have not been passed on. I now see it to be my mission to do that. Here's some other school gardens that I've helped kids to set up. This is a kindergarten in Tokyo where they don't have a garden either. It doesn't matter. I show them how to grow food on walls and planter boxes and pots wherever they have some sunlit space. And the middle photo here is called a chain garden, which is, you can probably guess, it's a garden on a chain. And these chain gardens can be hung vertically down any sunlit wall, and they can basically transform any sunlit vertical wall or fence into a small garden, a large garden even. Next up, other places where people can grow food in the city, community gardens. I'm lucky in the town that I live in, North Tokyo, we've got about 45 or so community gardens, which used to be rice paddies back in the day. There's many towns around Tokyo that have no space for community gardens at all. These here, the typical size of a community garden is 3 by 5 square meters, which is slightly wider than a standard car park. And it is unbelievable how much food can be produced from a 3 by 5 square meter patch. Each year I plant 8 tomato seedlings, like the one I showed before, and 8 cucumber seedlings. And I usually grow about 1,500 tomatoes. That's 1,500 tomatoes, and about 300 or 400 cucumbers, 40, 60 lettuces, and all the herbs that the family wants. We never eat all the food. There's always way too much. There's some of it there, and you can see the little ladybug on the right hand side. They come along too, insects. They like the colors, they like the smells. And all the food, none of it's perfect. You get the cucumbers that don't look straight, that doesn't matter. And you get tomatoes with little discolorings on them. Doesn't matter. It tastes fantastic when you don't use chemicals. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why we have salad dressings, because when food is produced with chemicals, I think that the chemicals actually suppress the natural flavor. So we use salad dressing to add flavor to the food. But if you grow food naturally without chemicals, it's got the natural taste, and even lettuces taste fantastic. Here's some other food that I've grown. You got radishes, got a cucumber in my shoe, but no, I didn't grow the shoe, but the cucumbers. That cucumber, that's about 35 centimeters long. It's not too good to leave them growing too long because they'll grow. During summertime, cucumbers will grow 2 centimeters a day. And the pea one on the right hand side. Rooftop gardens too. I'm really getting into rooftop gardens at the moment because cities like Tokyo have so much empty space on rooftops. The garden on the left at Montessori School of Tokyo, I worked with kids 2 months ago to finish that. That's now a working garden, like you can see. And my company installed a 4 raised garden at a 4 raised garden bed at the Grand Hyatt Tokyo 2 years ago. And they were growing food for their restaurant. They were growing herbs and tomatoes and lettuce leaves and radishes and so on. Also nasturtium to put onto salads. That was good. Urban rooftop gardens, you can see these if you go up tall buildings and look down. This particular rooftop garden here is on top of a JR train station in Tokyo, Ebisu train station. They have a community garden up top where anyone can rent these tiny little raised gardens. They're quite expensive, but they're good for families with kids. One key initiative that I launched last year to spread the good word about urban farming while also helping others is called Food Havens Tokyo. And what does Food Havens Tokyo does? Well, that basically, it combines urban farming, basically growing food in the city, with community support. And what I do here is I connect with people in Tokyo who either have their own garden or who want to start one, and I train them and work with them to set up gardens on one condition, that they donate some of the food that they grow to Tokyo's Second Harvest Japan Food Bank. And Second Harvest Japan Food Bank basically give away free food to people that need it. Refugees, single mothers, the homeless, you name it. And you can see on the photo on the right hand side, there's been lots of donations going on. I did 9 in spring last year. And the foods come from my garden and schools and other people that I've been working with to produce it. And it all goes to Second Harvest Japan. They put it on plates and people pick it up same day and eat it. So it's got a direct social impact. And Food Havens Tokyo is basically about getting people to think not just about what food can I grow for myself, but also what food can I give to other people who may have a greater need than myself. And moving on, COVID-19 obviously is a big deal now. And if you read the news, you'll find out urban farming is taking off worldwide as people realize that it's pretty, that if food supply and food production gets affected by the virus, we all need food. How can we get it? The answer is grow it yourself at home. And urban farming is really working there, because if you have a garden at home, you don't have to go outside so much to actually buy your food, and you take back some of the control of your own food supply. And if you don't use chemicals, that's all good. And also just the knowledge that you are growing your own food at home can clearly reduce stress. It's fantastic when you get into it. The future of food. The future of food. This is an interesting one. And the way I see it, I see the future of food as basically free food everywhere, on every street, on walls, in large planter boxes and raised gardens lining city streets. I basically see it everywhere. And note the free. How can this be done? Well, there's basically using the rooftops again. This here is a rooftop in Brooklyn on top of an old donut factory. This is on top of the 3rd floor, and you can see the Empire State Building in the distance there. This is a massive raised garden, and this place, they grow their own food. They supply food to local restaurants, taking it there by bike. And they run gardening tours too for people who want to learn how to grow food. They can come up there and actually touch the food themselves and learn. And the key point here is that even though most food comes from the countryside, we have a lot of available free empty space on rooftops that can be utilized to bring the food into the city, so that we don't need to bring the food to the city by polluting trucks. Rooftop greenhouses, this is a big one. This also brings the food straight into the city. This is the world's first commercial rooftop greenhouse in Montreal, Canada. And there's I've seen 1 or 2 supermarkets that are doing this already. In the States mainly, where they basically grow their own food in greenhouses on the rooftop. And then they don't wait for the food trucks to bring the food in. They just have staff walk up to the rooftop and take it down to the groceries section. Okay, so that's something we can grow in the city. Why not if we don't have any space? We can just grow food in thin air. This here is a chain suspended between 2 points, and recycled cut up 2-litre PET bottles have basically been hooked to it, and I planted food in them. And these chains can be strung up like clotheslines, but they don't carry clothes, they carry food. And these could be utilized in a massive number of different ways. They could be strung over in vacant plots, over car parks, from the side of your house, between power lines, you name it, quite easy. Indoor farms, this is a really big deal. I think this is going to be the future of food production as the temperature outside continues to creep up, and it'll soon most likely become too hot to produce a large number of different food outside. Indoor farming, where the temperature is controlled, lighting is controlled, water supply is controlled, and indoor farms like this fruit farm here can produce food 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, in the snow, in spring, summer, autumn and winter. When you grow food inside, these seasons don't matter outside. It can be snowing outside, and these fruit farms, or whatever the indoor farm is, can be producing food right through winter, which is a massive, massive change to traditional food production, which stops in winter because it's too cold and starts in usually March. How to get started? Quite simple. Plant something and do it today. How can we do that? Well, I'll just switch screens there. How's that? Yep.
No worries. I think John, if
can
it,
see that.
yeah, we can still see the screen, but no worries. If I can switch to the next screen whenever it's ready. But
Okay,
wanted you to close out the presentation.
Okay, yeah.
As you wish.
I just sort of trying to, yeah, okay. Yeah, so,
No worries.
yeah, okay, yeah. So, basically what, just the way we can start is just get a pot like this, get some soil, and get a packet of seeds, maybe like these ones, and put the seeds into the soil and water it. And we can start tomorrow. And we don't have to get authorization to do that. We don't need to make up some kind of mission statement. Yes, we don't need glossy brochures. We can just start straight away tomorrow. Okay, so that's my part of the presentation done. I hope people learned something.
Perfect. I think we all learned a lot. Yeah. Thank you, John. We had just a few quick questions that we had from the viewers. So Paulina asked, how can we tackle the issue of polluted urban soil from industrial activities? So when growing our food in urban settings where the soil or some of the natural resources might be more polluted, what's the kind of solution there?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, because and whatever's inside the soil will go in under the plants, because the plant roots basically suck up whatever's inside the soil. So it's critical to have good, nutritious and clean soil. So the simple way to get around that is to basically change the soil. So if you're not sure what's in the soil, which if you are using some land for the first time, you probably won't be, then the simple solution to that was just to dig out part of the soil that you plan to grow in, add some new soil that you know what's in there, and then start growing then. Yep. So, so once again, the soil and the quality of the soil is absolutely critical, because if it's poisoned, then the food that's grown in it will also be poisoned. If it's not poisoned, if it's good organic soil, then and that's the way to basically do it, to ensure that you don't get poisoned yourself.
Right. Yeah. In a lot of ways, there's more control in urban settings around the soil you're using, rather than sometimes soil that has been pre-used for agricultural purposes that you don't know what's in it. So.
And what Kai was touching on a lot before about composting too. That's one of the best ways to actually to rebuild your soil. You basically mix your compost in with. You basically mix your compost in, and if you know, like if you're making that compost yourself, then you'll know what's in it. And by putting compost into soil, you can basically rebuild the nutrient level, and you can rebuild the quality of it, and you can rebuild the trust in your own soil, which might sound strange, but if you trust your soil, you'll trust your food.
Yeah, perfect. And a question from a fellow Kiwi in New Zealand, from Cindy Mullins. So anything we can grow easily inside under lights during the cold winter months in the Southern Hemisphere?
During the cold winter months in the Summer Hemisphere, I'd say to Cindy, basically, try for the baby leaves during wintertime. Warmth and light are the key factors to growing successfully inside. So if you put your planter boxes in front of your largest sunlit window, and make sure that the interior of your house is as warm as you can possibly make it, and then sow baby seeds, baby leaf seeds, or whatever you like, and just see what grows. And if something doesn't grow so well, then just move it to another sunny location and see how that goes. Gardening is basically a case of trial and error, and the more mistakes you make, the more you learn, and the more things that you learn not to do, what not to do next time. Yep.
Yeah, great. Thank you, John, very much. That's great. So we'll move from urban farming to rural farming with Minori Ogawa. So Minori, whenever you're ready. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I will start the presentation. Can you still see the screen?
Yeah, we see the background screen for now.
Background screen.
Yeah.
Okay, how's it now?
Yep, now we can see it.
Okay, I start the presentation.
Great.
Okay.
And if you want to do full screen, if you can hit play, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But actually it could be okay for me. Actually, it's better for me.
Oh, okay. Okay, no problem. No problem. Yep.
Okay, so in case anyone new is watching, my name is Minori, and I'll be talking about the concept of Han no Han X, or half farming, half anything, as a part of the solution of the current food system. Actually, I was so happy to hear everybody's presentation, because I could really resonate with like everything what you said. First, okay, I will talk about little bit about myself. My father is an agriculture researcher as well as organic farmer. So since I was very little, I was helping my dad on the farm. So I studied organic agriculture in high school as well, and I studied nursing in university. Now, since I was a teenager, I was always dreamed to contribute to the world peace, as I could have several opportunity to support like homeless people in Osaka, or to meet indigenous people in South America, or because it was my interest, I was working in refugees camp for some time. And then also I should mention, as some of you already noticed, that I'm living in Fukushima prefecture. So the catastrophe in 2011 definitely affected and impacted and inspired me a lot to do what I'm doing now. So I will talk about Dana Village a little bit. So Dana Village is a community for the holistic health by use of organic farming and healthy diet. In this time, we do cook lots of vegan food. I mean, we only provide vegan, we call it ethical vegan food, and we provide yoga, healing, and do lots of workshops such as nonviolent communications or like different permaculture and other stuff to lead people to the holistic health. And as a community, we try to live as sustainable as possible. And this was one of the things we collaborated with Nihon University to set up the water purification system, which is called Lohas toilet, which use only 94% of the electricity which other purification system use. And it's almost no drain water comes out, and we can even grow some plants on this system. So I will not cover all the issues in the food system as everybody already went through, though as most of you know that current system causes environmental vulnerabilities such as drought and pollution, poverty among farmers, and create a massive amount of food loss. And one of the biggest issues in the system, what I found is the greater degree of obesity causing disconnection and ignorance of people. How many of you know how the food is grown, which we put into our mouth today? I still remember when I was a child, my snack in the summer was a cucumber freshly harvested just in front of me at the farm. One of the previous volunteer at Dana Village asked me recently what the seed of the rice was. I think everybody knows it, but the rice is seed itself. But I was so shocked that he didn't know it, and we are living in a time where people have never grown food or touched the soil. This is a tomato from our garden, our farm. And the lack of connection and knowledge means people take food for granted and contribute to 45% of our 6 million ton food loss that comes from Japanese household alone. That's either, I found it's like just really comes from the disconnection. And now I want to talk about nature deficit disorder, which was coined by Richard Louv, that American nonfiction author and journalist. He found there many symptoms such as diminished use of inherent senses, attention difficulties, including hyperactivities, condition of obesity, diabetes, and higher rate of emotional, physical illness comes from lack of contact with nature. I think Johnson also mentioned about allergies that comes from the food poison as well. If you experience any of these symptoms, I recommend you to turn off your smartphone or TV and leave as much as artificial things from out of your area and try to contact with nature, like natural wild plants, or use aroma or eat organic food. But I know it's not always easy, especially in a city. So you might think about, I'm not talking about the food system, but as Kai-kun mentioned, that lots of issues are really interconnected. And what I want to tackle is not only superficial level, but deeper cause. And today I want to talk about Han no Han X, half farming and half anything, which is what I'm doing right now. So you too. So I think that buying food from local farmers is good, but that to become a farmer is really something you can consider, because the self-sufficiency rate in Japan is very low. It's also an urgent issue as the average age of the farmers in Japan is 67, which is, who can imagine after 20 years, who can grow the food? And plus, as I mentioned, farming can contribute to your health by touching the soil, and waking up with the sun strengthens your immune system. This is another photo from our farm. Now, do you think you want to become a farmer? Of course, there's a lot of stigma regarding to farming, like farming being dirty, hard work, and that's the income is not stable, which might make you feel anxious. But it's, this half farming, half anything, this anything, I think it can bring you the security. So at Dana Village, we grow vegetables such as tomato, beans, pumpkin, and melon at the greenhouse. This is the greenhouse. And we also grow most of the food which we consume, such as rice, potatoes, salad, and mushrooms. And we make our own miso and koji fungus itself, which is very helpful to make lots of different sauces. And so we do farming, and another X can be the guest housing. You can see some of the photos of our guest room. And financially, through our farm, we support about 1/3 of our total income, and the rest is covered by guest housing, giving lectures, and organizing different workshops and retreats. Which means farming can only support part of our finance. However, it also covers 50% of our food consumption in summer, in the winter, and around 70 to 80% in the summer. So there are also a lot of edible wild plants all over the land, which are very tasty and nutritious, and we use them in our cooking a lot. This is some of our productions, and this is some of our food. This is, and many people consider that you might get less income in the countryside compared to in the city, which is true for most of people. But you can lower the cost you spend for food for sure, and even renting out the space to live. Buying a house is super cheap here. Cheapest price I heard was from my dad, which cost 12,000 yen. So it's only about $100 for one entire house with 6 rooms. And renting a house is also very cheap. Average in this town, I can say it's 5,000 yen to 10,000 yen. So it's $50 to $100. So it's super cheap, and the cheapest I heard is free, because by living in the house itself, it contributes to the community, and it just becomes good, big human resource to that's old community. And I should mention, especially in a time such as this with coronavirus, we can realize the importance of food, right? And farmers are essential to our survival, and growing your food definitely increase your security. Because I found a lot of people go to urban system and do work because out of their fear. So I realized this Han No Han X lifestyle works similar to basic income system. If you can sustain your life with what you can grow and receive from nature, it's really a gift to economy, as Kai-kun already mentioned. And you can use your time for other things such as developing your creativities, volunteering, or learning new skills. There's so many ways to enjoy our life in a country. And for me, I say half farming, half anything. But for me, like farming just become part of my life. And it's just so natural to do something related to farming, and which is not same mindset as you do work for just earning money. So living in the country is different than living in a city for sure. And of course, you might need some skills to communicate with locals and like that. But I hope after listening to my presentation, you will start taking the time to question yourself what you're currently doing is really what you want to do or not. As Kai-kun also mentioned, there's a Japanese term, if there's no money, there's no food, something like that. But in a country, it's not the same. Even you don't have money, there's lots of gift from nature makes you feel enough. From this year, I put more effort to sharing my experience and the way of living into the education, because I think the living that gives options and idea to live alternatively is really works like resilience to survive this world. And I want all children to live as they want to, and with connecting with nature. Okay, I think that's it for now.
Thank you very much. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Thank you.
So that was great, and I think one thing I've learned being here and the chat on Facebook is kind of feeling this way as well. What kind of programs do you know about, or how easy might it be for people to find the land or find the housing, both for Japanese people, and then it might be even more difficult for foreigners? Are there any good ways or any websites to start to find the right places to go to look for some farmland to live the half farmer, half X lifestyle?
Yeah, actually, I found it's not so easy to find online, unfortunately, especially to the people who don't read Japanese, for example. But the best way is to access the locals and to become a friend with them, because even the farmland, there's lots of abundant farmland which you can use for free, but of course they don't give for anybody but to the people who they know. So I think the best part is try to contact with locals and to become a friend, and I'm happy to help that if anybody wants. And also, for example, the town I live, Nishiaizu, they provide their some, how do you call it? They call it otameshi jutaku. So you can try to live for up to 3 months like a resident with a very cheap cost. And then you can kind of experience what the life can be. Then after, it can be much easier to think about finding the houses and renting out the farmland, because everybody actually want to give for rent their farmland instead of just leaving it without doing anything.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you. And what was, sorry, what was the name of the 3-month program again?
In this town, it calls otameshi jutaku, like otameshi jutaku.
Okay, okay, cool. Okay, we can share that. We can share that after as well, because I know there are a bunch of people who are interested in this.
Yeah.
Okay, and kind of same question. Because I know you and Kai are kind of both in more rural settings, not Tokyo like John and Riho are, but Kai is in Chiba, so I'm wondering if it might be a similar situation kind of there, or kind of what advice or thoughts you might have in terms of that.
Yeah, so I'm in Chiba Prefecture, in a pretty awesome city called Isumi-shi. Very alternative, but also down to earth. And just for people who are not in Japan or aren't so savvy about how Japanese land works, most Japanese have moved to the city. We have villages disappearing, so there's lots of land. And what's amazing about Japanese land is that the infrastructure is there. There's rice paddies, beautiful soil that's been cultivated for hundreds of years. You could not make that now, and it's just lying there. So Japan has a major shortage of farmers, but the land is there, the infrastructure is there, some of the traditional knowledge is still there. So so that's just the context. And so now the issue is really about access. So we have abundance of resources, it's just the access that's sometimes challenging. And as Minori said, it's about relationships, especially as you become more rural. There's more tradition, there's more human to human based exchange. And so it's all about being able to have good relationships with people, and that's partly to understand the cultural context, but to just be a wonderful person and to be considerate and caring, you know, all this basic stuff that we know. And so for me, it was just, I knew somebody who knew somebody, and then the land came into place. And so it's really about relationships. And I also want to bring it back to the gift economy. If you give, it just sends out that ripple, and you don't know how it's going to come back, and it's not really about it coming back to you. But the more you give, the more things will just naturally come. So my rent is donation based, which is crazy, but it's donation based. And then people have given me money to renovate a traditional Japanese house and start the Peace and Permaculture Center. So it's just, I just try to give as much as I can, and then things come in. And so that's the other point for anybody anywhere in the world. Just give and keep giving, and then the world will just become a much more wonderful place. And it's easy when you grow food, because food, like John says, you just grow abundance, and it's hard not to give it.
Very good. Okay, cool. And there was another kind of, so I think we have quite a few people from Tokyo tuning in. So I think some are quite curious how, you know, with working 10 to 18 hours a day, you know, how to start to, rather than kind of seeing food as a commodity item, just kind of start to integrate that more into your like just a few easy first steps. So I guess for this one first, we'll go to John and see what your thoughts might be. You touched on it briefly, but what's a good way to start, you know?
Okay, that's a very good question with a very simple answer. Just buy some pots, like this one here, and buy some soil, and then just sow some seeds or transplant a seed like this parsley here, and then just start. And you can upscale quickly just by expanding how big your garden is and using more containers and pots. Now, when it comes to time, once you've got your garden actually set up, if you're basically growing at home, you're probably going to be looking at no more than about 10 to 15 minutes a day, if that, to water your plants. Once you've got your seeds sown and your plants transplanted, it's not a big deal to maintain your garden at all. The only change to that would basically be during summertime, when you might need to water your plants twice a day instead of once a day. So once you've actually got your garden set up, it's very simple to maintain it. It's not a big deal at all.
Okay.
Yeah, and when many people spend 20, 30, 40 minutes, maybe 60 minutes surfing social media, just spend some of that time tending to your garden, no problem.
Right. Yeah. And that plays, you know, we've talked before a bit about, and I think all you guys kind of touched on it in one way or another, but some of you mentioned, rather than spending 15, 20, up to an hour a day on social media, getting your hands into soil. What are some of the changes you guys have personally seen from people you've like helped to train or coach, and kind of what has come about in their personal lives beyond just getting their own food? What are some of the, you know, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, if you want to go there, benefits of growing your own food? So Minori, I'd like to kind of hear from you on that one.
Yeah, I think it's just there's only benefit to grow the food, but I think many people just experience it by touching the soil, especially even I said farming, there's lots of different way, and our farming method really follow what's nature needed. So with our way of growing the food, just induce all the life force of the plants, and yeah, just combining all the effort of microorganism. So by I just add some explanation when I invite like teenager or young people to do farming, and then they just can associate with their lifestyle and how the plants grow, like in spiritual way, I can say.
Yeah.
And they can just look at themselves naturally, that just to start to question themselves that, oh, the plants from small seeds, they can really make big fruits with all natural gift, water and sunlight and soils. So then they look at themselves and they just feel what they need for their spiritual growth.
Yeah. And speaking of kind of youth in Japan and getting more involved with food, Riho, you've been involved in a few more youth focused movements in Japan, as you've mentioned. And can you tell us just a little bit more about what you've seen? Have you seen any initiatives or any desire amongst like maybe high school or university students to maybe, rather than go into a more traditional kind of city dwelling life, and do you see some who are choosing to kind of get more back into nature and grow their own food and work in food systems in that way? Have you seen some of that?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a tendency in our generations to kind of want to kind of get reconnected with nature. So I have like quite a few friends like who say that, and also some of my friends have moved to rural areas after graduation, and like started living like more closely with nature. And but I think it's still a lot of us finding it difficult to kind of find a way to start farming.
Yeah.
So I think like today's talks by those three were really helpful, like about balcony gardening, or like something that we can start from like where we are.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's important to not just think of like either or in the solution, because the reality of the situation is we need to come up with solutions that are urban and rural, you know, especially in places like Japan. And actually Melanie wrote in a question, Melanie St. James, hi. She wrote a question about decentralization. So as we've seen in the past few weeks and months with the COVID-19 crisis, a lot of jobs are able to go remote and kind of transition. So I don't know if any of you guys have any kind of specialty or any feedback in this, but that could very well also be a possibility. So the half farmer, half X life, I know there are a few towns and prefectures in Japan which are focusing on bringing in some startups that can work remotely. So just have Wi-Fi for half the day or a few hours a day, and then be able to live a life where maybe they're able to spend more time outside growing their own food. Are there any examples of some towns like that you guys know of? Yeah, Minori, do you know of any of these?
Yes, they definitely support, because for example, in this town where I live, there's a 6,000 of. Sorry, it's time. Okay. Okay, so there's a 6,000 of population. Okay, and almost half of the population is over 65 years old. You want to see, right? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, and they really encourage people to move from city. Okay, sorry. They really encourage people to move from city to country. So, but Wi-Fi, for example, they support up to like million yen, okay, sorry. sorry. Yeah, sorry. Okay. I don't know if you sit here. Can you be quiet? Okay. Sorry. Yeah, but anyway, there are lots of financial support to move from a city to country. Like, yeah, some places million yen, and Fukushima prefecture wise, I think they give up to 2.5 million yen to renovate their house, because there are a lot of old houses being empty, and it's becoming lots of issues in the country because nobody lives there and just being demolished. So there are lots of support for that.
Okay. Okay, and do you guys know if that is that program, does that also apply to foreign residents in Japan, or to only Japanese residents? Kai, do you know? Don't know.
I have no idea how it works.
Yeah.
But there's another place in Tokushima, I think it's Kamiyama.
Yeah.
They're doing a big kind of IT, based kind of revitalizing the rural area and making it a new life option. And where I live in Sumi, we also have some young people who started up a place called Hinode, and it's kind of like a train. It started up as a collaboration with the local government to help young people who want to make it in IT based businesses to be able to live a rural life and have that experience. And in their programs, you're learning, and then you start up a company, and then you try to cover the costs of the program. So there's all kinds of I think there's just like tons of initiatives like that, but I'm not sure how much of them are foreigner friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. John or Riho, do you guys know any more about that? Yeah.
Here one I've just recently come across. I was contacted by a member of JMAC, Japan Market Entry Competition, and it was basically a team that was looking at setting up a indoor farm inside a renovated hotel, I think it was, in the countryside, and they were sort of basically looking for commercial funding to basically fund a test indoor farm inside a renovated hotel that was long past its prime. But I think so when it comes to looking at initiatives like that, I think a key thing is to either look for sponsorship or investment from companies that are keen to actually invest in and not just rejuvenating the Japanese countryside, but also boosting food production. Because when you look at Japan's food self-sufficiency level, I think last time I checked it was 26%. And COVID has made that much worse now because and food production has been affected around the world, and also food supply, which means that there's likely to be cuts to the level of food that's imported, not just to Japan but to every country. So yeah, I basically think getting big money invested in food production projects, indoor farm production in the countryside is a good key step. Because I think we're going to have to not just look at new technological initiatives to boost food production, but I think, like I mentioned during my presentation, I think we're going to have to look more and more at moving food production inside, into indoor farms, as the outdoor environment keeps on getting warmer and warmer. I think we're going to have to sort of really, really quickly move food production indoors and upscale it massively fast.
That's an interesting point. I guess so kind of a more urban farming answer to the question, to the issue of global warming. And does anyone else have any kind of thoughts on that, like Kai or Minori, in terms of?
What's the question?
The question being your thoughts around kind of some of the indoor, like the larger indoor farming initiatives, which are happening in places like New York and Berlin. I know there was that large Berlin company, is it Implant, that just signed a big deal here in Tokyo. So very much kind of an urban or indoor farming. I know that's quite a step away from getting into the nature and into the soil. But have you spent any time in?
I'm generally pretty skeptical about the high-tech approaches to things, just because often new technologies often produce new problems that we're kind of surprised by. And also because when you look at the whole system, and from production to waste, often high tech has high energy costs, which has to be generated somewhere, and oftentimes it's fossil fuels. And even solar panels, you need fossil fuels to produce solar panels. So it's kind of like we're locked into creating more climate change and pollution, because everything we do that's cheap requires cheap energy. And so this is our dilemma, is most of the solutions that we come up with, if we don't question the very assumptions and the foundations of our economics and our production system, we can't actually address. Like, climate change has been around for so long, and we're coming up with more and more complex solutions to really simple problems. And I think the coronavirus, what it's exposed is a lot of problems, but it's also exposed that when our current economic system, when it slows down, suddenly the air is cleaner. Suddenly the water is less polluted. Suddenly, we have more time. So these very fundamental things that are important to us that we've let go of because we need to keep the economy going, I think we're starting to, it's kind of this weird, like, wow, Delhi's smog, which was like killing people and in the national, you know, international news, is suddenly gone, and people can breathe fresh air, you know.
Right.
And Tokyo used to be really polluted in the 80s, but it's cleaned up its act. And so we can do these massive changes. So it's really about how not to continue the current train of thought. And that's not to say that indoor farming doesn't have a place, but for me, it's like a gateway. It's kind of like, let's keep that option in case nothing else is going to work. And let's keep that option for people who are mostly in urban areas who might not have space to grow anywhere else. So that's cool in itself. But for our most fundamental solution, let's do what we've done for thousands of years that we know definitely works, and not bank on something that we still don't know if it works or not.
Right, right. And I guess it's a matter of scaling that up rather than scaling, you know, how do we scale that idea up quickly rather than scaling up something which has a lot of the money and the resources to spend on the marketing and growth of something. But again, I think, yeah, there are definitely places for both urban and rural solutions. But yeah, that's really good points you make. Yeah.
I think I want to add that the diversity is definitely needed in the food system as well. So what Johnson mentioned, that to use a high tech and create the urban farming in the indoor farming, it can be useful for if we keep going this consuming based system. But for example, in our farm, we collect the seeds every year. So even I believe even that global warming and the temperature changing, if we collect like every year, that plant itself started to adapt the situations. So I think we're gonna figure out if the farm, we just nature itself just develop the skills to produce the food in bit of the different temperatures.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, guys. So we have just about 10 minutes left, just under. So I just wanted to, I'm hoping we got to a lot of the questions. I'm really sorry if I missed some. Okay, some good questions and comments coming in, but I kind of wanted to go around one last time for you guys' thoughts on kind of an actionable step or two that everyone watching and everyone who will eventually see this can implement into their lives, whether they're in Japan or outside of Japan. And let's go the opposite way we first went. So we'll start with you, Minori.
Okay. Yeah, I think what I want to tell people is, just open up your heart and follow the nature within you. That is very important. And then listen to the nature of yourself, listen to the nature outside. And I think that is a key point to start.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. And John?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've got a few points. I just hope I've got time to mention them all. And the first one was basically just to look around you. Because many people in cities like Tokyo are growing things. They're either growing trees or shrubs or flowers. And it's really important to think that any sunlit location where a flower or a shrub or tree is growing could be used to grow food. So, and all that we need to basically do that is just to change the soil and then change the plant. So change from a flower to growing lettuce, change from growing a shrub to growing radishes or spinach, whatever we like. There's a lot of space in big cities like Tokyo to grow food if we open our minds and just look around us with an open mind. It's kind of like when you get married and you start to wear a wedding ring. You suddenly start to notice other people and wearing wedding rings because it's a major thing that you're thinking about. When you change your focus, suddenly the whole world can open up and you can see, I mean, I walk past car parks and all I see is community gardens. I see on rooftops, and I think rooftop gardens, I just see food everywhere, even when there's not. Another point is just like I was saying before, just grow food. I've got something here. This is not quite my dinner, but part of it could be good on pizza. This is it's a storage box that you can buy from just a 100 yen shop. It's normally used to hold clothes and socks. You can basically transform things like this into your own gardens. You can use a lot of recycling. You can grow food in shoes and boxes and containers of all types. So recycling is a great thing to combine with food production, and it's really simple. You can basically take your trash from the waste stream and turn it into planting containers. So you can solve two problems at once. And one more point is this thing here. This is pretty flash. This here is a 2-liter plastic PET bottle that I've cut into. Turn around the top and planted a parsley in it. And this is pretty cool because when you water this, the water goes down and it drains through the nozzle and it gets captured in here. This acts like a water tank. So this simple thing here, this is a great party trick for kids' parties and kids' birthday parties. You're not only recycling a plastic bottle, you're also recycling water. 99% of planters don't do that. So this thing here, this kills 3 birds with 1 stone. This does the plastic recycling, it does the water recycling, and it grows your own food locally. Okay, that's 4. So that's a good thing.
Amazing. Amazing and definitely resourceful. Yes.
And they can also be upscaled easily too.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll go to Kai for a few last thoughts. Wait, you're on mute. Sorry.
Unmute.
Hold on. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Now all good. Yeah.
All good. So
Yeah.
I just show my last slide because it kind of, with the amount of time, I think it has what I want to say is first step is grow something. Other people have said it. Here's something, eat something like a fruit, a tomato or whatever, get the seeds out. And as you're walking, just plant it anywhere. It's called guerrilla gardening. I've done guerrilla gardening workshops in Tokyo, and first the kids are really into it and the parents are like, I don't know, that looks illegal. But once the parents, follow the kids, then they're like, planting seeds in government property and all kinds of stuff. So it's really about breaking out of our trance, out of all these rules that we think we need to follow that we actually don't. And some of the rules are actually not safe or healthy for us. So I'm not saying break them all, but break a few. And so that's kind of just something you can do tomorrow is eat something, find the seed, plant it, an apple, tomato, whatever. And look up permaculture, because permaculture is really my passion, and it really helps to transform how we see reality and gives you the power to create a different reality that actually works for you. And then, like I said, on the systems level, it's like, how do we change the system? Because it's a systemic issue. It's not each of our individual efforts. We can try all we want, but it's a system that changes, like how we see ourselves through our education, what we think is valuable through our economic system, who wins in politics. And one good organization to check out is Local Futures. They work internationally, and it's just an amazing network of really awesome people who are working on solutions, from indigenous people to like high tech to people in finance. So they have a really awesome movie also called Economics of Happiness. But they're really about localizing economy, localizing food as the key steps. And then lastly is consciousness. And it's like, how do we be more generous people? How do we care more? How do we actually help each other? And I think this coronavirus is really testing us and seeing, how do we react? Do we go more into protectionism, Or are we like wanting to be like, this is when we really need to help each other. This is why we care. We have compassion. So Service Space is an organization I highly recommend checking out because they're all about compassionate acts all over the world and really amazing network and good ideas and positive news. So yeah, just some few next steps for you to check out on your journey.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks. And Riho, final words, please.
Okay, so it's been really an interesting discussion. I think we've got quite a lot of hints in our discussion today. So I think that it's really important to start taking action, whether or not it's like big or like regardless of like scale of the action. So one thing that we should start doing is like as John and Kai mentioned, like composting is such an easy thing to do at home, and you can still feel like the nature even though like you're inside, and also like starting to plant something, or like if that's still kind of something that you feel kind of afraid of starting all at once by yourself, maybe you can find some initiatives in your local area so that you can talk to like those like minds. So that's my last thoughts, I guess.
Definitely. Community is an important part of it, just so we don't kind of get a little burned out and lost. And luckily there are some great food and sustainability focused and local communities that are both in Tokyo and beyond, and we're hoping to serve it in that same capacity too. So okay, so I think that is about all the time we have here. Sorry for the few technical glitches at the beginning, but thank you guys all for tuning in, and thank you very much to our panelists for the hard work and the wonderful presentations. I hope we can all come away having learned a few things to bring back and put into our lives wherever we're living. So thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.